Hey, what's happening? Welcome back to The Bald Perspective. On your way in, go ahead and touch the like button, hit subscribe if you never subscribed, and hit the notification bell so you'll get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk. Well, guys, I tried to resist the conversation about a Lamar Jackson trade, but the articles would not leave me alone. I've been reading the potential for a Lamar Jackson trade type articles for about 10 days now. Probably the Friday after the Steve Bisciotti press conference is the first time I believe I saw an article. But I dismissed the first article. Why? Well, Steve Bisciotti clearly said, I want Lamar Jackson to be my quarterback. And then at the beginning of last week, maybe Monday, Tuesday, saw another article. Thursday, saw another article. Friday, read another article. Still decided, nah, can't go to the people with this. And then ESPN kicks down the door and says, bam, here it is, Lamar Jackson trade conversation, right? Not that there has been a conversation, but what I'm saying is their presentation of it is something for us to talk about. And so initially, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, as a Lamar Jackson fan, you probably just say, this is just a bunch of hype. It's just simply made to attract readers. But I've been reading these articles for 10 days. I don't really listen to much commentary because when I'm doing my reading, it's typically early in the morning or late at night and people are asleep. And so when somebody takes time to write something, they put some thought into it. And so I began to kind of go back and look at the articles and how they were written. And a lot of them came from a very similar context, that the Raiders really need a quarterback, and the situation out in Baltimore, that being Lamar Jackson needs to restructure his deal and get an extension. And one of the articles, if I remember correctly, kind of points back to the point of contention back in the 2023 contract negotiations. And I said, you know what? I think a trade is possible. Now, right now, I'm only going to give it about 10%. That means 90%. Lamar Jackson stays in Baltimore. 10% gives it a little bit of life, right? And so instead of me just dismissing it, I'm going to talk about why a trade is possible, why it could happen from both the Lamar Jackson perspective and the Baltimore Ravens perspective. And then in the next video, I'm going to come from a Raiders context and a league context. So let's get into it. When you look at it from a Lamar Jackson player perspective, would he demand a trade? Yes and no. I say no because I think he's okay being in Baltimore. But I say yes, why? Because he's already requested a trade before. That's factual. We know that. We've seen him come out right before the John Harbaugh press conference in 2023, making note that he had already asked for a trade. And that was at what time? When his contract negotiations had stalled. And we all remember that. Okay, let's contextualize it. In 2022, he ended that season in injury, which kind of led into, or did lead into, the end of his fifth-year option. So the Baltimore Ravens had no way to hold Lamar Jackson. So what did they do? They put the franchise tag on him. Well, this time around, he ended a season with some injury concerns, and it's time for a new contract extension simply because his cap number is so high. The difference is exactly what Steve Bisciotti referenced, is that they have some ways to make something work as it pertains to a deal not getting done, turning that money into void years. But he is under contract. That's the only hold for Lamar Jackson being in Baltimore, whereas in 2023, it was the franchise tag. Both create a point of contention. because in 2023, he was looking for his brand new second deal. In 2026, he's going to be looking for his third contract. And so not getting the deal done, having to kick that money into void years is going to aggravate both parties. All right. So when you look at it from a Lamar Jackson perspective, a trade could be demanded if the relationship sours and a deal seems far off. You see, this is an offseason unlike many we've seen in Baltimore Ravens history. We are changing regimes at the head coach. I think a head coach is named by the end of the weekend or before the end of the weekend. Well, why? Well, a big date coming up pretty soon is January 31st, which is the Senior Bowl. You're going to need an administration in place, head coach, OC, DC, and some scouts to be able to go be like a politician, shake hands and kiss babies down at the Senior Bowl to do a little bit of recruiting, right? And so then once the Senior Bowl is over and Lamar Jackson begins to get acquainted with the new regime, now the clock begins to start ticking on a contract extension because the Baltimore Ravens have other work to do this offseason, such as figuring out what they're going to do with the offensive line, figuring out who they're going to target as it pertains to an edge rush, those kind of important matters as well. And so the longer a contract is not done, the higher the frustration will begin to build between both parties. You see, we understand how EDC has operated in the past. If he can get a bargain on a deal, he'll try to get a bargain on a deal. And this is a point where Lamar Jackson is coming off one of his worst statistical years. He's coming off an injury-plagued year. And so from a GM perspective, his value as it pertains to a long-term deal may be a little bit down. And so we understand that EDC has the likelihood to kind of pounce on that point, right? So I think it definitely raises the likelihood that Lamar Jackson could ask for a trade, and they also could be willing to trade him if they believe that this team isn't good enough to get it all the way done. You see, Lamar Jackson would be okay in Vegas. And I'm using Vegas specifically because that's what the article was written about. He would be okay in Vegas. Not saying he would be immediately in championship contention or anything like that, but he would make the Raiders instantly better. But also, from a player perspective, the Raiders aren't going to shy away on writing him his new check. Also, out there in Vegas is Tom Brady, who is a partial owner. I don't know how many percents. That's not the important part right now. But we know that Tom Brady has an affinity for Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson likewise for Tom Brady. So if Tom Brady comes calling, Lamar Jackson is not going to pick up the phone. He absolutely is going to answer the phone. And if Lamar Jackson is interested in what Tom Brady is saying, and the Raiders are willing to push draft capital into the middle of the table, including this year's #1 overall pick, I think absolutely the likelihood moves from 10% upwards. Now, let me be clear before people get upset. As a Baltimore Ravens fan, as a Lamar Jackson defender in my past, I absolutely would like to see him stay in Baltimore, at least for the next 3 or 4 years. And if he does not win a Super Bowl in that time frame, he is still young enough to go elsewhere and compete. So that is my preference. But what I'm simply talking about is likelihood. 10% right now is where I stand. But if this thing drags on, and if we start hearing that they're far apart, that there is no traction, that kind of thing, then you're going to start seeing that likelihood meter tick up more and more and more. Because we've already seen him ask for a trade before. And that in and of itself should put me somewhere around 20%, but I'm going to camp out at 10 right now. Now, the other factor that Tom Brady can bring to the table for Lamar Jackson, who knows quarterbacking better than Tom Brady? Lamar Jackson is a quarterback. Lamar Jackson doesn't mind learning. He doesn't mind taking advice. And who better to take Lamar Jackson behind the curtain of the cerebral play of a quarterback than Tom Brady? And who can help Lamar Jackson build an empire beyond football? Tom Brady. Now, some could say Peyton Manning, but he ain't in this conversation. But Tom Brady could show him how to even get more bread off the field. So when you think about those things from a Lamar Jackson perspective, a move to Vegas wouldn't be that bad of a deal. And when you consider on the field, warm weather all year. So the minimum of 8 home games will be warm weather. Plus 1 game in LA against the Chargers. 9 games a year, he's guaranteed to have great weather. And so get into the playoffs, host a home game, good weather in January for Lamar Jackson. So I think there are some bonuses to a move to Vegas. When you look at it from the Baltimore Ravens context, why would they do a deal like this? Why would they make a trade? Well, again, if the Baltimore Ravens believe that this roster is not good enough to win, and not just win, but win it all, they could absolutely see hitting the retool button, not the rebuild button, but the retool button. And there's no quicker way to retool than getting the number 1 overall pick, turning that into your quarterback for the next 5 seasons. Then you do whatever you need to do with the 14th overall pick. And you may even be able to ask for 2 firsts and Max Crosby. The purpose is that Vegas is going to need to be able to offset some of the money they're going to be paying Lamar Jackson. And so if the Baltimore Ravens don't believe that they could win and these contract negotiations don't go so well, I could see the likelihood of a trade happening. And so I'm not going to live in that space and just be on here pounding the table. The Baltimore Ravens better not trade Lamar Jackson. No, because we've seen other great quarterbacks move teams. Brady didn't finish his career in New England. Manning didn't finish his career in Indianapolis. Montana didn't finish his career in San Francisco. When you look at greats like Jerry Rice, played for another team. Tim Brown played for another team. If I'm not mistaken, Emmitt Smith played for another team, unless I'm just not remembering correctly. So there's been other great players to move teams. And so I'm not going to camp out in that area that says Lamar Jackson traded anywhere is a no-go, because it absolutely could happen. And so you guys let me know what you think. Do you think that if negotiations sour and go too long, that it increases the likelihood of a trade? And do you think that Vegas would be a solid place for Lamar Jackson to land? And would 2 firsts plus Max Crosby be a good deal? And maybe some lesser included picks. But until next time, I'm Miguel Boulanger, and I'm out.